Alrighty then, welcome everybody to another stream, but that's not a stream because I don't have good enough internet connection to actually stream, so... Anyway. Today, of course, I gotta download everything. Alright. Well, my girlfriend invited me to a realm and she wanted me to build something. So, I'm gonna build a house. That's pretty much it. So, anyway, let's talk about religion stuff now. Politics in the last one, religion this one. Speaking of which, while that's loading, I don't think that I've actually uploaded this video yet. Yeah, no, I haven't. Okay, so how do I do that? Yeah, that was playing the whole time, and I didn't even realize. Alrighty. It's loading in. There we go. So, looks like the house that George started with. Looks like you wanted me to build on a mountain. Is this the mountain? Alright. What's this thing? I've seen a peculiar merchant appearing at night. They carry paintings unlike any I've encountered before. Each one seeming to shimmer with otherworldly energy. Should you meet this mysterious artist, they may be willing to trade their works. On using the paintings, it's simple enough. Place one upon any wall, then reach out and touch it. The painting will draw you through to somewhere. Each destination is unique to the painting itself. Warning. Once a painting has been used, it becomes forever bound to that spot. Breaking to destroy it completely. However, an unused painting can be safely recovered if you change your mind about its place. I must admit something about the virtue troubles me. The snide scripts, but about nature I cannot say. Okay. No, not one. That one. Alrighty. So, we start with religion. What do I say? Independent. I mean, I don't say that, but I know other people say that. Technically, there is no beginning. But, it's fine. Where to... Ow. Thank you, Bugrock. Where to begin other than the Big Bang? But that's not science. Science. That's not religion. What if it is religion? You're just thinking, you know, God exists out there, so why would he use science? Science, you know, proves everything without the use of God, so why would I believe in God? Yeah. Two types of, people out there that war between religion and science. Those that believe in religion but deny science end up believing in unrealistic things like the flat earth. Yeah, that's just... no. In order to believe in the flat earth, you have to kind of deny gravity. In order to deny gravity, you kind of have to say that everything's just simultaneously flying upward. In order to say that everything is flying upward, then velocity still exists. But if velocity exists, then that means that science is real, and that if science is real, that means that gravity is a real thing, so the Earth should be a sphere. Science, on the other hand, like pure science, no religion at all, that idea comes off of a basis of, oh, well, I can prove what's right in front of me, so If I want to claim that something I cannot see exists, that would be the denial of science. But a major part of science is believing in theoreticals and speculation. And, with that comes a lot of things that we can't prove. Something that sticks with me after all these years is one of my science teachers told me that with science, we can't prove anything. Everything in science is a theory. Yeah, is that a dumb thing to say? Kinda, because then, there's no basis of reality or morality or anything such thing within that. And ultimately, nothing really matters because then science outweighs everything that you are, and you're eternally pointless or insignificant, which is just a whole other thing. But combine the two of them, say the value in reality is that there is no physical proof or tangible proof for everything. That many things can be, but not everything can. You end up with faith. That, there are things that we can presume and come to believe in based on the things that we've seen. But there will always be something that we need to base our beliefs off of. Otherwise, there is no basis. There is no foundation for our beliefs. So, how does this relate to the Big Bang? Well, you see, what we do know is that all matter comes from somewhere. Cannot be created or destroyed. Can be changed, altered, dismissed, transfigured, transmutated, anything. Be a whole number of different things. But what it cannot be is created or destroyed. So in order to believe in the Big Bang Theory, you have to believe that there is something before the Big Bang. In order to believe that there's something before the Big Bang, that means it's not the beginning. So, where does all that energy and mass come from? This is where I say theoretical physics. That's our answer. Things can build upon each other, but nothing can't come from nothing. Something can't come from nothing. Nothing can't come from nothing? That doesn't make sense. Something can't come from nothing, and nothing can come from something, but what is it I'm trying to say? What is this saying? Nothing can't buy me. No, that's the Beatles. That's what I'm thinking. Can't buy me love, nothing, something. No, it's not the Beatles. Money can't buy me love. That's the Beatles. Nothing comes from something. I don't know where I'm remembering that from. Oh my gosh. I unlocked a memory from years ago and I don't remember the origin of it. Either way, point is, in order to create something, you must have something else. So, in order to have something in our plane of existence, it would have to come from some other plane of existence. Most likely a higher one because, conservation of energy and mass. In order to create something, it has to lose something in the process. creation of energy comes with the destruction of something else. Fox. So, what's that other something that all that energy and mass came from? Well, we can say a God because he's a greater being than our dimension. But then that would just mean that we are God, and that technically makes us thoughts rather than matter. And so that one doesn't really make sense. Could say from God's world, which means that his world would have to exist outside of. Okay then. Hi there. And you are. Well, I can't afford that, so. God's world would then have to exist outside of our three-dimensional space. So, we go to a higher dimension, as I hinted at earlier. So, for those of you that don't know what dimensions are, or don't properly understand them but have, heard the term in the past, it's not like it is in the movies of, oh, well, this dimension is, like a slightly altered version of our reality. Now, that's a different universe, or a different reality. A dimension itself is a direction. It is something that we can measure or search beyond. Starting from the very beginning, we have the zeroth dimension, which technically isn't a dimension, but it's a point in space. Now, technically, it is also all of space simultaneously, because that is the only thing in existence in that dimension. So, yeah, it's not really a dimension, it is an existence point. So the first dimension is a line of all those different points. Every single point that can fit within that line is a moment, a space, a time, anything. Ultimately, something that we can't really fully comprehend because we're three-dimensional. We can see a line from the outside, but in order to be within the first dimension, you have to be inside that line. Can you see past one space to another space? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. What makes a little more sense is the second dimension. A bunch of those lines lined up side by side to create a flat plane, or a screen, such as the one you're looking at right now. Or looking away from because I'm boring you and you don't want to hear anything that I'm trying to say, but you just need to put on some background noise. And so, either way, it is the distance from one edge of the screen on the top and the bottom and on the sides to the other side of the screen. So what's three-dimensional? Well, that's the actual computer you're watching it on. The screen is connected to the depth of the screen, the direction of the laptop coming towards you, or the phone going away from you. It's a whole bunch of things. Or, even paper would be a three-dimensional object, despite it being so thin. And since atoms have a three-dimensional space around them, an item or a flat plane that is an atom thick is still three-dimensional. No matter how difficult that is to really visualize in the three-dimensional mind. So, how do we then visualize or comprehend the fourth dimension? You know, there's kind of nowhere else that it can go, right? Well, at that point, you're then taking all of the points within. See, whenever you take the first dimension, imagine there's 100 points lined up from one end to the other. In order to create the second dimension, you then have to take all 100 of those points and multiply them. Every point expands. Yeah. And then, same thing with the second or the third. So with the third dimension, take every single one of the points within that three-dimensional space, and you translate them. Take them from one place to another. What exactly does that mean? Well, it means taking the room you're in, moving everything slightly one direction, taking everything, compressing it down to the size of a ball, expanding it out into the vastness of space, reshaping it without changing the size, turning it into an apple of some kind. Any possibility of what you can do with the atoms in that space is the fourth dimension. And by this understanding, we can figure out the fourth dimension is, in a ways, potential. Just pure potential energy. So, where does the third dimension come from? Well, it comes from potential energy. Okay, that was a freaky sound. It is potential energy. You know, as Isaac Newton once, or many times, said, an object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. So in order to create the kinetic energy of the third dimension from the potential energy of the fourth, you have to have an outside force acting upon it. And an object can't act upon itself. I'm sure many of you have heard the theory of, well, if we take a fan, stick it on a boat with a big sail on it, the fan will end up pushing the sail and moving the boat, perpetuating a self-propelling vehicle. But the force, and the backwards force created by the fan negates all the force captured by the wind, or by the sail, and due to loss of energy, would actually end up pushing you towards the fan when the fan is blown away from. So if anything, if you want that to take you anywhere, what the frick is that sound? Is that the sound that the magical dude is around here somewhere? Okay then. Either way, if you try and act upon yourself, you'll just end up recreating or canceling out any energy that you put into it. If you take one hand and push it against the other, while one hand may be stronger than the other, it's not pushing you anywhere. You're still sitting, staring at your phone on the toilet, and now you're just arm wrestling with yourself and looking dumb. But that means there must be at least a fifth dimension to put the Big Bang into theory, to put that kinetic energy into place, or into action. To make it. I don't know. I suck at words. I'm great at grammar, but I am horrible at actually utilizing that grammar and, you know. But anyway, you're here watching me lather on, and so something's working. So, from a scientific standpoint, in order to understand and rationalize the Big Bang, you kind of have to believe that there is a God-type figure out there in the form of a fifth-dimensional being. So, if there are fifth-dimensional beings, that means there are fourth-dimensional beings. Why don't we come across them more often? They're a lot closer. Well, you're right. If you thought that. If you didn't think that, I thought it for you, so. But what comes between God and us in pecking order? Well, the answer is angels. But what is an angel? What would a being that exists in the fourth dimension really be? Well, let's see. If we take a visualization of the fourth dimension, see if I can find one real quick. Hang on a second, I'm trying to figure out something here. Really should have done this before. There we go. Alright. I'm not great at this. I'm still figuring out OBS. So, now you can hear me. So, which one is this? Not that one. This one. That should be that one, right? Yeah, there we go. So, take visualization. Let's find an image of it. So, we can come up with all of these different ways of, visualizing it. But in reality, it's probably something best visualized like this. But every single one of these tiny spots here is the possibility of the universe, our third dimension, the dimension next to us. What happened if you ate breakfast this morning versus if you didn't? Or, let's see. Or in this timeline, some guy said, hey, and you ignored him. And then this timeline, he said, hey, and you jumped on his back, started riding like a horse. In this timeline, he said, hey, you ended up staring at him for 50 seconds, and then every single atom in your body just simultaneously, collapsed. Now, you can't see my mouse, can you? That's fine. You can take it back to the pretty music now. Either way, that ends up taking, everything that we possibly could know, everything that has a potential to happen in reality, and everything that, still possible, but it's highly unlikely, and it visualizes it all in one place. Here, see if I can visualize this somehow in Minecraft here. Snow, just get out of my way. Okay, so take our log. In one universe, the log ends up expanding like that. And then in another universe, the log ends up deteriorating into the dirt. In the third universe, the log shrinks back into a sapling here. In a completely separate universe, everything inside of that log ends up changing drastically, completely jumping from one kingdom over to another. No longer plant, not inanimate, not less in itself, but completely different living organism. Or, all of a sudden, that tree becomes me. Here I am looking around. I'm not a tree, but I used to be. Yeah, bunch of crazy, wacko things that are really complex for us to figure out. And yet, each and every one of them is completely plausible in this universe. So, that means that every spirit, every angel, every life form or organism that would exist within the fourth dimension would always have existed from the beginning of the universe, would always exist, and then also simultaneously always being destroyed. So, that is Schrodinger's cat. Within the fourth dimension, you are the cat. You both exist and cease to exist. I don't talk as much. Also, you can't place blocks according to Minecraft. There, set. So I'm going to take all of those different possibilities. Yeah. One universe. What happens beyond that? The answer is practically nothing. Nothing ever happens. Just exist. In all honesty, for someone that never knows anything else, that seems fine. I'm trying to put a thing. It's very rude of you, sir. But for us here in the third dimension, that's what we call torture. That is just absolute torment, locked in eternity, never really knowing anything else than the possibility. There. Faces the piano, are you kidding me? Just want to see what the back of the thing looks like. Alright, no way. But in religious term, that sounds like hell. You're trapped for eternity in a place where you can't escape. But when you don't know any better, yeah, that's all you have ever know, all you ever will know. It's kind of just part of the course. So, a fifth dimensional being that can see everything, that exists outside of the fourth dimension, creates the fourth dimension, and then sees that everyone within it is living in torment, whether they realize it or not. Ends up going to them all and saying, hey, guess what? I have an option for you. Of course, everyone for the dimension says, oh, well, you created us. You know everything, so we know that you're the one that made everything. So listen, what you got? Says to him, imagine a world you don't know anything. People say, I can't imagine that. I'm trying my best, but I know everything. And yet, despite knowing everything, I can't imagine that. How can this be? It says to him, because when you have all knowing, all knowledge, and thought and reason, you have no understanding of causality, no rationality of thought. You are, in a sense, completely devoid of knowledge and understanding. So you say, well, how do we obtain this understanding? He responds by saying, I will put you in a world that I will oversee, that I will control and dictate. And within this world, you will know nothing of me, nothing of the universe around you, but what you can see, feel, and touch. You will not be able to see the past or the future, and you will, in a way, learn from nothing. So, how does this benefit the people in the fourth dimension? He's essentially asking them to give up everything that they have, just for the sake of some world that they don't know, they don't understand, they might never know. It's a bit of a risk. Sure, this man created them, but is that worth it? So he explains further. In this world, you are going to create mistakes. Since you know nothing, you will be free to do whatever it is that you want to do. People say, oh, well, we're not exactly doing anything right now. The fact that we can do anything seems pretty cool. So what do we do once we get past that? That's it, then. I will make into the world, and I will send down people that can hear my words, people that can lead and guide me. And ultimately, your goal is to come back to me. But whenever you get back here, you will have understanding and knowledge that you did not have before. Because of this knowledge and understanding, you will be able to grow to greater heights than you ever did in this world. People say, oh, well, that sounds pretty good. And if there are things that we can do in this world, on that world, but can't do in this. And then once we're done with that world, we can move on to the next. Yeah. Suddenly makes it feel like this world is really boring. Yeah, if you can't get out of here, it kind of makes me feel like I'm missing a lot. So, God then says to them, there is one catch. Once you make decisions that are contrary to my words, you will be seen as unclean. But in order to be made clean again, I was Savior. Savior to do the work necessary to absolve you of your wrongs and your sins. In order to truly obtain that work, you must accept his words. You must accept his sacrifice. And you know, pretty much everyone says, alright, well that sounds like a fair enough deal. It still beats being here. So we asked them, is there anyone among you that chooses to be as that chooses to do my will and do the work that absolves everyone here their sins? Two of them speak up. First one being Jehovah. Now Jehovah says, I will do the work. I will go down to earth, and I will be obedient to do everything you tell me. I will absolve his sins, and I will give all the glory to you. Another, Lucifer, says, I'll do it. When I go down there, I will make sure that everyone makes it back. No one ever has to worry about getting stuck and unclean. And that's what I'm going to do, because you know, if I do that, I can get the glory for saving everyone. And then, you know, God says, doesn't work like that. If you enforce that everyone makes it to heaven, then you kind of take away everyone's freedom to choose whether they will or not. And the whole point of going down to earth in the first place is to make decisions. It is to live in a world where we can decide things for ourselves, to make mistakes. And so he picks Jehovah, because he will do the work that God entrusted him with. Of course, Lucifer doesn't like that, so he ends up rebelling against him and saying, for as long as I exist, I will have nothing to do with you. I will oppose you in every way. I will ruin your plan. Make sure that as few people as possible make it back. And so it is cast out. It gains a body. It exists purely, eternally, within the fourth dimension, without ever having a chance to gain understanding. Because in his purest form, and with full knowledge of God, he rejected him. Meanwhile, all of us, those who did not follow Satan, were born. So, the next question is, if we're three-dimensional beings right now, does that mean that there weren't no three-dimensional beings before us? Well, no. Of course there were three-dimensional beings before us. They were primitive creatures that can't gain that same understanding. They're just wild creatures. They have the animals of the earth. The creatures that don't reason, that act on instinct. Because of that, they are pure in their hands, and they're not going to get punished for doing bad things. The saying, all dogs go to heaven, that's absolutely true. A dog can't sin. So where else is it going to go? Hey, look, I can make a chest now. As if I couldn't make that before. But either way, it takes all of that. And it gives us this world where we can make mistakes. We can do all sorts of bad and wrong things without permanent consequences for our decisions. So then, what comes after that? Well, as I stated before, science is very much real. So, God creates the earth. And while he certainly has the power to do it in the span of 7 earthly days, it likely wasn't actually 144 hours, as many people believe. As we get into the whole debate of natural creation versus divine creation, and evolution versus just creation. And if I created a tool, or if I had a tool, and could do the work with that, while I'm sure that I could find some other way to do it, I personally would use the tool that makes it easiest. So, why would it be irrational to think that God used science to create the earth, to create all the animals? But that serves a good purpose as well. Like I said, the three-dimensional creatures, they act on instinct. They don't rationalize, they don't overthink things, they just know something's up, and they respond to it. So what purpose does that serve us? Well, if God creates our spirits, takes them out of the 4th dimension, puts them into one particular time of the kinetic events, or kinetic timeline playing out in the 3rd dimension, we now exist within time. We can see the progression to events. We can see the earth being formed. We can see the animals growing, the art. And being 4th-dimensional creatures, we wouldn't have instincts. We hear a twig snap, and it just kind of exists. We don't think, oh, the reason the twig snapped is because there's a panther walking through the forest. And you just step, and now it's going to pounce on us because it's just revealed itself. That could be put on the earth, hear that, and then just assume all is fine and get eaten. So if we have the history of the world playing out before our very eyes, we can learn how animals think. We can learn how to survive. It also explains why so many people are born without common sense, because they might have seen all of that, gotten complacent, or not have cared enough and just thought, oh, I'm gonna end up down there someday and just figure it out on my own. And here they are on the Earth. They see a battery and they think, oh, I'll lick that. See a light bulb and say, hey, that's almost perfectly sized for my mouth. Let's see if I can fit in there. That thing kind of looks like a yummy snack. I know that it gets put in the washer, but it looks like a snack, so I'm gonna eat it. Yeah, the kind of things that babies do because they're not thinking. Except that for some reason adults and teenagers do it. Yeah. You would assume that in a world where we are the most advanced civilization has ever been, we would have the most rational people, and yet it just doesn't work like that. Because, quite frankly, people are stupid. But they're not stupid by design, but rather by choice. They saw everything that creatures did throughout time to progress and evolve, and then said, I don't need that. That's not for me. I'm a bit more larger purpose than that. I don't need to learn how to, survive in the night. Hi. And then ultimately just end up starving to death because they have no idea what they're doing. That's why games like Minecraft are great, because while you're not super practical, they do have some kind of common sense behind them. Unless the blocks that you place just disappear. Mojang, fix your game, please. I just want to place 3 blocks in a row without them disappearing. A message. Whatever does it say? Siege. Mayhaps. Let's see, what time is this at? I'm recording, where am I? I guess I don't have a thing for it. Oh, no, down there. 49 minutes. Okay, just gotta remember to blur stuff out at the 49-minute mark. In bit. Alright. So, anyway. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here we are. In the 4th dimension. We have, no memory of the world before us. Little enough rationalization of the world currently that we're still pretty helpless. So, somebody's got to start it off. Adam and Eve. Actually, before we get there, might as well go with a really quick touch on something that I theorize, but doesn't have any theological evidence behind it. You know, Neanderthals. We watched plankton become larger plankton, and then those larger multicellular creatures develop into sponges and fish, and the Cambrian explosion. It's wonderfully put by a masterclass of YouTube writing. Man, I wish I reached that level someday. But, that then leads into the dinosaurs, and then the dinosaurs are gone. And then from the dinosaurs, we have the planet, starting to cool down, going to the Ice Age, the third Ice Age. Because, yes, there were two Ice Ages before the dinosaurs. In case you didn't know. So, real quick on the climate change thing. Of course the planet's going to get slightly warmer. We're recovering from an Ice Age. That's just nature. It's not human... That's not humanity's fault. People just say it's humanity's fault so that you end up spending more money to try and fix things that you didn't cause, so that they end up getting rich and powerful. Because, if you had anything to do with it, we would have seen the effect by now already, so. But either way, don't be scared about that. Just be aware of it. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. We've seen all that. The Ice Age exists. Neanderthals grow up. Apes become more intelligent, start to learn to use things with their hands. As directed by God. Okay. Yeah. As their evolution is guided so that we can be made in God's image. Now, obviously, there are no Neanderthals around right now. So where did they go? Well, they either just were killed off by having our similar genetics but not having the instincts for it, by God just, breeding them out or something so that they didn't keep producing. Or they ended up evolving into something else, like Sasquatch or skinwalkers. I don't think it would be, I don't really think it would be the latter, because generally skinwalkers are considered to be evil creatures and the animals aren't evil, but I don't know. Maybe that's more like a witchcraft thing rather than an evolution thing. Oh, on that topic, recently watched a horror film with my girlfriend called The Wretched. Ooh, that was freaky. Because of my understanding of religion and evolution and all that, it does seem completely possible. Which, might as well touch on right now. Being a fourth-dimensional being within a three-dimensional body, we would have the power to do many great things, to manipulate this dimension however we want. Now, there are certain things that we're not allowed to do because, they go against God's plan. But there's plenty numerous opportunities of things that could happen. See, things like Jesus walking on water, that's just simple transmitting your or translating your body throughout the world, or changing the surface of the water to act differently. That's there. And then, I mean, like descending from the heavens, the same thing, just moving his body from the sky downward. Did it actually come from the sky? That came from heaven, which is non-existent within the third dimension, but for the sake of divinity, you know, it looks good. You know, pretty cool. Not fully necessary, but it gets the point across. So, you know, I'm certain that God really does have a sense of humor like that of, I don't really need to do this, but why not? It's fun. Doesn't change anything, and just, but cool. See. When do I come out? Oh yeah, my girlfriend and I are going down friends tomorrow, so we can do some magic stuff. Let me ask her real quick. Turning on the phone, looking at the phone, swiping through all the notifications. Let's see, I don't know that person. Would you be able to do? Oh, what I got asked to do, to watch my niece tomorrow. Problem is, I've already got plans tomorrow. Unfortunately, I am tomorrow. Alright. Here's disconnect. I can get back to you later. So, talking about, oh, what is it called? Pre, uh, what is it? Pre-prebit idea? That's the theory that, the second coming happened in 70 AD because that's whenever Jerusalem was destroyed. But that's like the only thing that happened. There was there were none of the other signs that happened then. But anyway, anyway, that results in us being able to do many great things. You know, through things like witchcraft or voodoo or any number of spiritualism and Buddhists, having out of body experience or astral projecting, all that. It's quite logical and believable, but well, possible, not necessarily in adherence with God's word. Let's play tic-tac-toe. I go this one. There's my X. Haha. Anyway. By way of all these different things, it gives a very different understanding of reality. world we live in. But ultimately, it doesn't change the purpose behind the lives that we live. It just gives us more understanding. And generally, it's because of that, that's why most people aren't as necessary to learn about it from a scientific perspective. As well, it's not really taught in the Bible. It's just kind of something that we can figure out as time progresses. With science, we can theorize about higher dimensions and all that. But theorizing doesn't get us to heaven. It just helps us understand. No, I must be going crazy. So anyway, after the world is formulated and prepared for us, we get the first two humans, Adam and Eve, who, when they're first placed on the earth, are like children. Thoughtless, or rational, lacking rationale and understanding. God tells them, hey, you give you two commandments. You gotta multiply, and you gotta take care of this earth. Or multiply and take care of this earth. And then don't eat that food. That fruit being the fruit of the true knowledge of good and evil. Why would God not want us to gain knowledge of good and evil? True question. It does. Bottom is, in order to gain knowledge, understanding, we have to make decisions for ourselves. And if Adam and Eve existed in the garden, living for millions of years, only ever doing what God told them, sure, they would be obedient, sure, there would be great examples, but there would be no understanding. There would be strict obedience and only obedience. So, in order to truly obtain that understanding, they had to transgress. They had to choose contrary to what God told them. After all, without that understanding that they got from the fruit, they would have been living forever in violation of the other commandment God gave them, to multiply. Now you can't do that if you never learn how. Despite what M. Night Shyamalan might try and say in this weird beach movie. His point is that all these many great things that we have learned aren't possible without free will, without a decision to think for ourselves. And once we can think for ourselves, that's when we can choose to be obedient to God. Without it, we're just mindless beasts. That of the other creatures of the earth. Adam and Eve took a great risk in doing that, but ultimately it paid off because that was it was necessary to fulfill the law. Being with this about my book, when the turns out it's technically behind this one. Similarly, eating food is called transgression and not a sin. Because in order to sin, we must understand why what you're doing is wrong. Transgression is to know it's wrong, but still do it anyway. Necessary, but still not. I don't know. That seems like it should be contrary, or like it's contradictory. It was only through understanding that game that we can progress. I'm going to go spend some time with my friends since apparently, despite my many thoughts growing up, I am popular, so I will save this for later. I will continue this thought in a different video, and I will wish you all a good day. So, get to wishing, and get to having. I'll think of something else. Anyway, goodbye for now, strange people.